It's a portrait of fraud. And to welcome your panel to the stage, I'd like to introduce Andreas Naumann. Naumann, please come and join me on the stage. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Since we're already introducing people, I have 3 more people I have to introduce to you. So there's Alex from Checkout 51. Hey man, welcome. Cyrus from Playstudios. Oh no, are you ready? Okay, awesome. Welcome, sir. Okay. And Erik from Potichnyj.
That was quite the introduction.
So those 3 gentlemen are very well versed in the arts of user acquisition, and they're here on this stage because they are fighting the good fight for quite some time, and I spent some time with them before on everything fraud. And they're very knowledgeable, and I'm hoping having them answer a couple of questions is going to help you to do the right thing and figure out if fraud is a problem for you, and if so, how to get rid of it. And yeah, I'm going to jump right into it. So first question, Alex, what was the first time that you encountered fraud, and how did you deal with it?
For us, it happened really quickly. It wasn't the first time when we encountered it. It was the first time we found it, really. But it was one morning. We're just looking at our UA data for the previous day, and we saw something like 80 million clicks in 2 days in the US. And it was like, wow, this is crazy. So I asked somebody on our team, like, how many people live in the US? And she's like, 300 million or something. And I'm like, so 20% of people in US, if they all had a phone, clicked on our ad in the past 2 days. And that was either our product page is really, really bad, or something's wrong. And clearly something was wrong. So that's when I called our friend Kia at Adjust and was like, dude, like Adjust is broken, all the numbers are out of whack. And he's like, call you back in 2 minutes, after I gave him the details. Calls me back with Andreas, and who has become a good friend of ours from all this. And that's when we were hit with a big wake-up call, and went through a bunch of campaigns where we saw a lot of poor, bad, fraud traffic, whatever you want to call it, and spent a month learning about all the different types of tactics used to abuse your ad dollars, essentially. And yeah, things changed dramatically from there. And we're a small team, so for us to manage this stuff is very difficult. And then to add fraud to it on top of that makes it even harder. So this whole experience really changed the way we buy and the way we measure our performance. But yeah, and the way what was the second part of the question?
Oh, how did you deal with it? But so, yeah. You answered that.
Yeah, I guess the way we dealt with it was we really changed the way we buy. And yeah, I think if there's any advice from this, it's try to learn as much as you can about the different things going on. And yeah, when in doubt, message this guy.
Oh my God. No, please do. It's we have an open door policy. I have a huge inbox. I'm not promising that I will get back to you with a phone call in 2 minutes, but if there's questions, I'll be happy to answer them. For our next question, Erik, you've been doing user acquisition for quite some time. You have dealt with fraud. If you could go back in time to your, let's say, 2013 self and give yourself a good piece of advice to follow in the anti-fraud game, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice is just when you catch that first thing, just assume that's just the beginning. Like it's only going to get worse and worse and worse from that. So our big wake-up call was we brought in Adjust, and we see all the rejected installs for anonymous IPs and all this, and we blacklist all those guys, and we're like, victory, like we've stopped it all, right? And it was more like, no, if you see a network's doing this stuff, they're going to be doing a bunch of other stuff too. And from the moment that something happens, you should make the choice. Do you want to keep on fighting? Do you enjoy this fight? Like I kind of do. But if you realize right away you don't want to like learn everything you need to learn, maybe just get off that network right away. So I think my one lesson is like either play the game and learn everything you can about it, or just step out. Just don't use that network.
Anybody wants to add something to that? Any advice you would give yourself looking back?
I agree. Just educate yourself as much as you can on what's out there, because it's pretty spectacular, the type of things that are going on, and get the support, because it's definitely needed in this.
I'd say the market dynamics in 2013 are the same now. There's a lot of extra money spent on ads, and a lot of, on the gaming side, retention tells you that basically half your ad spend is gone within 7 days. Those people are gone. They're never going to play your game again, and that's kind of expected. There's just so much money doing fraudulent things, or in our cases, fraudulent app installs, that like there will always be a demand in an evolving kind of game we're playing.
Let me ask you the next question right here. Since one of the less fun parts of fighting fraud is going back to your supply sources and asking for chargebacks or make goods of any kind, how do you deal with those? And do you have a good tip, a special tactic, a process, a set one that you follow to do that?
I wish I had a special tactic, but I don't.
Send a T-shirt. That's my specialty.
You have to give them swag. You have to BD them back.
You'd be surprised. It works.
What I've noticed is there's just stopping fraud and being on top of things. We're constantly bidding on ads, so the faster you stop it, the faster you stop the campaign, the faster you flag it in an email, so it's written down, the less of, at the end of that month, you have to do some sort of large chargeback. Obviously, if you're going to charge back, $200, $500 in 2 days of spend, it's a lot more convenient and an easier conversation than if it gets to $100,000 at the end of the month. So the speed in which you are watching your campaigns and optimizing and actually stopping them as they happen, or saying like, there's something that looks funky here, just walking up to your AM and saying, hey, this does not look right, this click-through rate is way too high. The secondary thing is basically making sure everyone is in the same loop of communication. So you have to CC your BD guy, you have to CC the AM, and you probably likely have to CC the technical lead who understands what's going on. And you're going to be expected to explain the same data set over and over again to just multiple people. So actually, like the patience in my factor has kind of been, it's always a hard conversation to try to charge back like 200, 300 grand. But being able to have patience and not blow up a relationship, because it's honestly probably a lower tier publisher, so there might be value in the network. So blowing it up and kind of letting your ego get too much of you in these really awkward conversations is very hurtful.
Thank you. Any other tips from you guys?
Yeah, I kind of think there's like tiers, right? There's like the account manager, right? Then there's the publishers that could be doing something bad, or if they had an affiliate, the affiliate could be bad, and then the publishers could be bad. Or it could go down to there's some hackers in Germany doing something weird, right? And so it's important, like you said, to keep, the account manager might not be guilty, right? There's 4 other sets of parties that could be doing something bad, right? And you have to maintain that relationship. And I found there's little things you can do, like saying, I see some suspicious activity, instead of saying, I see fraud, that makes them look at it with you, right? And also, I tend to like really present the data very clearly, because I know they're going to take my data and then they have to go to the next person down the line, right? So I'm going to like control how it's presented, right? And those types of things have actually been very successful. We get refunded for our good installs in addition to our fraudulent installs on some things. So I think good relationship. I'm serious, I sent them a T-shirt because they do such a good job of getting a refund in some cases. So I'm like, I want them to know I really appreciate them working hard too.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's like the only thing I would add is it's important to to understand that it's not necessarily a network that's doing it. There's, they battle their own fights with their own publishers or affiliates, whatever it may be. So, yeah, like, with a lot of them, it's, some of this stuff comes to a shock to them as well. So I think it's just understanding that it's, it's not necessarily them against you. Which, in some cases it could be, but just being open to that.
So what all of you three agreed on is that one of the first steps in taking the fight to the fraudsters is to educate yourself. And that seems like a no-brainer, but Erik, do you have any special tips on how an advertiser can build the expertise, how to get the knowledge in-house to get where you need to be to actually fight fraud?
Yeah, I think there's a couple steps. So first, you should decide if you want to do it. So we have a team of 15 people, right? So with 15 people, you could have 1 or 2, 3 people be specialists in it that are backing everybody up, right? If you have 2 people, you might just not want to play this game, right? But assuming you do get into it, I echo what someone else said. Talking to Andreas up front leveled us up pretty fast. And something else we did is we have an agency partner that also kind of specializes in these dark markets where, we just see a lot of fraud and they have all their tools to handle it and get their refunds, and we're actually just learning the techniques really, really fast, right? So we got a partner too that's helping us, right? Like, you're a partner and also an agency partner. So I think you got to decide that you're going after it and don't be wishy-washy. Like, decide you're going to figure out that you're going to work with the fraud and clean it out, or you're not, I think that's one of the most important things.
You can add if you want to.
I definitely think it's a very deep rabbit hole. So the notion of commitment, you need to know how much your company can actually devote to the resources. You can just be more conservative in how you approach these networks, or more conservative in how many you can choose with. The quote that keeps on getting thrown around is that Machine Zone works with 300 ad partners. And I hope that none of your CMOs are tapping you on the shoulder saying we need to work with more. But in general, what I feel is they have the capacity to do that. And game networks at the size of your team, that's probably there's a resource constraint because it's a very deep rabbit hole you can go down. You can chase it forever.
Yeah,
I agree, for sure. I made a career out of it, so there's benefit in there for the people that want to do it. Cyrus, sticking with you, when you try to choose which networks to work with, what is it you look for in a network in the sense of data quality, traffic quality, transparency even? What is it you're looking for, and how do you decide which networks you want to work with?
It's always, it's similar to what I just commented on. It's always the feeling of, is the person who's communicating with me directly, how is their competence level of what we're talking about, right? So if they don't know, or they're pretty new to the space of understanding the fraud, then finding the correct individual within that network, or the correct technical lead in that network, would be more helpful. Just having that communication around that. I kind of put it at the context of there will always be a larger marketing budget to spend. So you'll constantly, as a UA manager, my actual job is to spend money. There will always be more money to spend, and it's not that that people can scale. It's more that if you can understand the inventory before you buy it, it'll do works for yourself as a career and also as a UA manager. If you understand what you're buying before you buy it, you can stop the $20,000 tests that are continuously happening each month with new networks. That will greatly improve your ROI.
Anything to add?
Well, I say first, I think I really love it when they're responsive. When you're showing them the data and they're trying to understand it, they may not just buy into it right away, but that they look at it, they have someone technical look at it, and then they go after whoever was guilty, right? But I think something I would love to see is a proactive network, right? That says, I caught this, and they tell me that they caught it, and I would just be like, that's what I'm
Send them a t-shirt.
Yes, I would send them a t-shirt for sure. So this one I told you about, the agency that does the dark market stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, they are kind of telling us the things that are are wrong. And then that's why it's really valuable, because they see some trick that I didn't see. And then I go test it against all my other networks, and I pull out a couple other people, So I think that's something I would love to see more of, that someone's telling you, like, we caught this. Because I think they would probably hide it right now. Then you don't know that they caught something. Yeah.
How much time would you give yourself to feel out a new network when you just started with them?
That's a good one.
I think you could tell within 24 hours what you're going to get, really, especially if you have the right tools in place. And then if you see something in 24 hours, is this something you want to continue to do every 24 hours for the next month? Yeah, you'll know quickly, and I don't think you need to give too much time.
Okay. Since I have you right here, the next thing that I'm really interested in, and ad fraud has been a buzzword this whole year, and another one that comes up constantly is transparency. And it's a very broad topic, but how much transparency do you see? Is it becoming more, less? Does it help in the relationship with the network? Does it help with finding fraud, fighting fraud, mitigating it? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think, well, unfortunately, I think we're moving to a world where there's less and less transparency, which is unfortunate, and just makes our lives and jobs more difficult. I think networks that you work with should be transparent with you, and you should know exactly which publishers your ads are running on, whether it's other apps, whether it's affiliates, whatever it may be. How can you put ads out there when you don't know where they are at the end of the day? It goes even beyond fraud. It's just, you have a brand to protect or a company image to protect. Like, you need to know where your ads are and what kind of sites they're on, or what kind of apps they're on, whatever it may be. So yeah, we're firm believers in getting that, especially after the experiences we've had. So yeah.
How's it for you? Do you get a lot of transparency? Do we need to demand it really strongly?
The larger your UA budget per month is, the easier the negotiating power. I feel like when you go and you test a new network, and the question is, do you do straight run of network? It's never turned out great. It's never been amazing results, and I know that that's the way we're optimizing in this world. But actually saying, like, well, I want you to bid on these exact publishers, and I want to see how well you do as you kind of evaluate the new network, kind of cuts and kind of gives the speed of, is this network going to be someone I'm going to work with later on?
Yeah.
How's it for you, Erik?
I was going to say, actually, I think it has to come a lot from you, right? So I'll get transparency, but I get transparency because I keep on catching stuff. And then I'm also very threatening. I've always mentioned the other things I caught on the other networks. And I do it in the form of, like, oh, lately I've been seeing, like, this type of emulator fraud. I saw it with these guys, and it's kind of like a warning, like, I'm going to catch it on you guys if you don't take care of it right now, right? So I think unfortunately, I think you do have to show that you're on top of it. And then they start sending me, like, fraud logics reports, and they start sending me these reports out of nowhere. But it's because you're applying a lot of pressure with your own knowledge, right? So I don't think anybody has been transparent without applying some pressure, I don't think.
No, it sounds about the same that we see on our side. Thanks so much, you guys. It's been great fun for me. I hope it worked out for our audience as well. We have another 11 minutes for questions. I would actually say, since I'm available anyways, not that I try to dodge any questions, right? I'm going to be here after the talk. I'm going to be available on LinkedIn, email, whatever. Take advantage of having those three guys on the stage, and please ask away. Raymond.
Andreas, hey. Great panel, great discussion. Thank you for being part of this. One question for all three panelists is your top two fraud types, right? You guys mentioned about high click-through rates, but just for the general public here, just want to know what those top twos are. Is it you're seeing click injections, anonymous installs? Happy to learn more about it.
Yeah, I could start. Andreas may need to jump in with the proper term for the tactic, but the two we experienced a lot was click spamming and stealing our organics, and anonymous IP installs. So we're only in Canada and US, and there was, some sources of traffic with like 10, 20, 30% of anonymous IP, and that just doesn't exist in terms of percentage of people that use anonymous IPs on their phones. So those were our two biggest.
For us, it would be click spam, and the secondary thing would be likely when a non-inset offer goes into the affiliate land, it gets rebrokered, and 7 stages down, it becomes an incent offer. Some of the really basic things that you can do to kind of check your own app out is basically type your iTunes app account and space CPI, because the affiliate network and the affiliate land actually has like your offer there for 15 cents on an incent wall, and you're like, oh, well, that's funny, I'm not running incent. So an easy check is to just check on Google. They're public. I mean, it's about scale for them, not at quality.
Yeah, I would say the same, click spam. And then the one that I think is the most interesting, we're seeing a lot of like really smart emulators that are pretending to play the game, and they do stuff like they trigger a purchase event, but there's no revenue, and where they fake the retention. Is really, really sneaky, and that's one I would start watching out for. Like, fortunately, we have some internal defenses for that, but I've caught that in a lot of different forms, and I think that feels like it's on the rise at the moment. Not from anonymous IPs, like, it looks real.
Yeah, I get it. We're working on it. Do we have anybody else that has a question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Where?
Over here.
Oh,
hi.
Hey.
Hi, guys. A lot of the fraud we're seeing is actually networks using the click tracker in the impression field. So I was just curious if you've done any tests using a third-party ad server for ad serving your campaign, to be in control of actually, the creative when it gets served.
On the rewarded video networks, I don't think they allow you to serve your own. Most of them don't allow you to serve. They're holding that ad server. For me, when I see the using the impression tracker as the click tracker, those numbers just never really align. If you back it out to a CPC price, it is an unreasonably cheap CPC price, so it would never actually work out at a CPI level either.
But don't you think you always need then to catch it, right? So it's quite time consuming. So have you done any tests with an ad server, or I know you said some of the networks say they don't accept ad serving, but do you see that as a solution, or just we need actually to always fight for it afterwards?
So you're saying I would, as a game company, I would have other networks hit my ad server for my ads.
Oh, no.
That would the solution be? Is that what you're asking?
No, I meant you mentioned that some of the rewarded ad network don't allow a third-party ad server. So you are sending them the video, but actually, you're not quite sure, if they are using the right click tracker, or if they put it maybe in the impression field rather than the click field. So I was just wondering if you've done any tests with a Celtra or MediaLed, some companies who are offering the ability to ad serve the creative.
No, not internally on my company. But.
Okay.
I haven't done it. I've just seen a different. Usually we see that putting the click tracker into the impression thing, and it tends to be a lot of pop-under networks that we're seeing that on.
Yeah.
And then I think the internal debate is whether we just say, like, do we want this type of traffic, and like we're okay with it, and then maybe we adjust our settings to be okay with it. We're not really sure, because it's like we don't really see what that ad looks like. It's like a pop-under that goes directly to the app store, right? And I think the only way they can make it function for some reason is to put the click tracker in. But I think it's a little different from your question, but we we haven't really fully decided what to do with those.
Okay.
My question is kind of around timing. So if you look at like day one of starting acquisition to 5 years later, you're spending zero to you're spending millions of dollars a month. At what point does this become really relevant? I mean, obviously, if day one you're starting on UAC or Apple Search or and then so at what point do you get to that point where you're like, okay, we got to jump in and do this? So I'd love some different perspectives, whether it's how much you're spending or when your ad networks expand to a certain point.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I feel like you could identify all the safe sources, right, and scale them as much as you can, right? And I guess I don't know what the volume number is, but my feeling is like if you were only spending, $1,000 a day, well, you don't need to bother with any of this fraudulent garbage, right? It's like when you have like huge volume goals, right? Like Uber, right? Uber is just I'm sure they had a huge growth goal and some questionable ethics inside the company, right? that drives them to like take more risks, right? But if you're small, and you see a hint of fraud, I mean, I wouldn't even bother, right? Like, what's the point? Like, you can do things safer on Facebook, or, I don't know what.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's plenty of I don't know. It depends on your vertical. Depends on your app. Depends what kind of users you're looking for. There's so many variables in there. But start with sources are for sure clean, and then once you've kind of limited those, then it's probably a growth and spend thing. That answers.
I think it's the measurement would be what percentage of your budget is a black box. And what percentage is it? I can go to that app, I can open it up, and I could play to level 50 and finally see an ad and see my own ad. So what percentage of your actual budget is something that you have no idea, like magically gives me installs?
Yeah. That should be a low percentage.
I'm coming with the mic, wait. Hi. I have a question to all of you, I think. I work on the network side, but I would really like to hear from you on the brand advertiser side. Where do you see this going as a whole, fraud? Do you see yourself keep battling it? And because there are new kinds of fraud coming out every 2 months, right? So are you going to keep fighting it and paying for third-party tools and trying to filter it out? Or eventually you're going to kind of, I don't want to say accept it, but it's going to balance out and you're going to incorporate it in your costs, similar to, I don't know, a candy shop owner who says, okay, I know that this and that percentage of my revenue, people are going into the store, they're stealing it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think you'll always need some sort of tool, whether it's third-party tool or internally built or both. And fraud is not going anywhere. When there's this kind of money being spent on media, they'll only get smarter as things are caught. I think the future is networks that are on the side of the advertiser and also take a stance against fraud and team up with the advertiser and the attribution partners and their publishers and make sure that the advertiser is getting legitimate traffic. Because at the end of the day, like you said, test budgets. Like if it's just a test budget, and all you're doing is getting test budgets, those will run out, and the companies will spend where the network's on their side. I think that's ultimately what needs to happen.
Yeah, I think for me, I can't imagine it being incorporated because stealing candy from the candy shop is 2% of sales, right? The nature of fraud, if you're not watching it, that's 90% of your budget, right? Like it'll just blast out like crazy and you won't know what's going on. I can't imagine ever just not paying attention to it. I would say personally, like me, I think a lot about how can I mount a counterinsurgency? Like how can I outsmart these guys with some kind of campaign setup or something like that they don't know about yet? Like I would be really interested to see companies that have some way to outdo them, right? And they sell me tools to outdo them, right? Because think of it like if just one company figures that out, right? They're going to make a ton of money. We're all going to just use their service, right? So I would love to see that.
We got to speed up.
I don't think I don't think the fight is ever over. I think the mobile app install kind of the money there is going to go towards similar to like the credit card industry, where they, an e-commerce or retail company does $100 million in sales and they accept X percentage of chargeback as much as that happens per month. And it's just going to be not necessarily it's just going to be more and more money will be devoted to actually protecting that spend.
But they accept less and less each month, right? They're always getting sharper about it, right? So,
and just risk management.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks to the audience for the good questions. We're way over time, so I'm gonna usher us out right now. Thanks for having us.